Eli Cohen was an Israeli agent who worked as a spy in Syria during 1961 to 1965. Cohen went on to form a close relationship with the Syrian authorities, providing crucial and strategic information to Israel. Eli Cohen was born in 1924 in Alexandria, Egypt, in a Jewish family that traced its roots to Aleppo in Syria. Eli Cohen went on to enlist in the Egyptian army but was denied entry on questionable loyalty arising out of his Israeli/Syrian roots. After the independence of Israel in 1948, Cohen helped many Jews to migrate to Israel. He got extensive support from Mossad as well. Cohen had to leave Egypt during the Second Arab-Israel War. Cohen managed to reach Israel in a boat from Naples, Italy. Eli Cohen went on to join the Israeli military and was placed in its intelligence unit. Cohen wanted to join Mossad but was denied a job there. Dejected by the decision, Cohen quit the military and took the job of a filing clerk in Tel Aviv. By 1960, however, Israeli intelligence was ready to take another look at Eli Cohen. Eli, after all, was born in an Arab country, had Oriental features, was known to be selfless and fearless in pursuit of a cause, and had knowledge of Arabic, English, and French. The border with Syria was heating up as well. One day in 1960, Israeli intelligence approached him about working for them again. At first he refused. But within a month he had lost his Tel Aviv-based accountancy job. When intelligence came by a second time, he jumped at it. His training was extensive and exhaustive. He was taught high-speed evasive driving techniques, weapons proficiency, topography, map reading, sabotage, and, most importantly, radio transmissions and cryptography. Intelligence created a completely new identity for him. Kamal Amin Tabet was born in Beirut, Lebanon, to Syrian Muslim parents. His father's name was Amin Tabet, and his mother's Saadia Ibrahim. Eli Cohen was first sent to Buenos Aires, Argentina, to establish his cover as a Syrian émigré. He soon established himself in the social and cultural life of the Syrian community of Buenos Aires and was known as a wealthy businessman who was generous, tipped well, and loved the nightlife. He soon became accepted, well-liked and respected, and made contacts with politicians, diplomats, and military officials working out of the Syrian embassy. One of them was Colonel Amin al-Hafez, a supporter of the secular leftist Ba'ath Party. Cohen's contacts, nurtured through a string of lavish dinner parties, social occasions, and friendships with those in high places, led to invitations to visit Damascus and to set up a business venture there. He was promised support in any venture he might wish to undertake, and the generous sums of cash which he appeared to possess appealed to the unscrupulous who thought he could provide grease to their financial ambitions, as well as patriotic Syrians who hoped for an infusion of foreign capital into the Syrian state. At the end of 1961, Syria dissolved its union with Egypt, which had lasted a mere 3 years. The Ba'ath Party was rising to power and Eli Cohen wanted to be there when it actually took power. He carefully cultivated contacts with the Ba'ath leadership, which included the Syrian military attaché in Argentina, General Amin al-Hafez. He continued his social life, spending a lot of time in cafes listening to political gossip. He also held parties at his home, which turned into orgies for high-placed Syrian ministers, businessmen, and others, who used Eli's apartment for assignations with various women, including defense ministry secretaries, airline hostesses, and Syrian singing stars. At these parties such highly placed officials would talk freely of their work and army plans. Cohen provided extensive intelligence data to the Israeli army. He sent intelligence to Israel by radio, secret letters, and occasionally in person. He secretly traveled to Israel 3 times. Cohen made a trip to the Golan Heights in which he collected intelligence on the Syrian fortifications there. Cohen convinced Syrian generals to plant trees for the soldiers exposed to the sun. He got trees planted at the secret positions. The information was passed on to the Israel Defense Forces, who targeted their opponents as trees planted by Cohen were used as markers. The Israeli military destroyed its target in the Six-Day War and captured the Golan Heights with relative ease. Eli's friendship with Amin al-Hafez proved very valuable. After Hafez became prime minister, Eli was even considered to be named the Syrian Deputy Minister of Defense. But changes were taking place in the Syrian government that alarmed Eli. In addition, the commander of Syrian intelligence, Colonel Ahmed Su'edani, trusted no one and disliked Eli. Eli expressed his fear and wish to terminate his assignment in Syria during his last visit to Israel in November 1964. Still, Israeli intelligence asked him to return to Syria one more time. The information he had been providing them for years was too good to forego. Eli did go back to Syria, but his behavior changed. He became far less careful in his transmissions to Israel, sometimes calling once or even twice a day, and almost always at the same time, at 8:30 in the morning. The transmissions became longer as well. The Syrians and their Russian advisors were alarmed by the intelligence that was seeping out of the country. The highly vigilant Russian security experts, equipped with very sensitive technical intelligence gathering equipment, pinpointed the source of the transmissions in the Syrian capital, and it was Eli's home. One day in January 1965, Syrian intelligence broke into his home in the middle of a transmission. A trial was conducted after Eli Cohen's arrest. Little did Syrian security agencies could extract from Cohen. Israeli Foreign Minister Golda Meir led a campaign urging the international community to force Damascus to consider the consequences of hanging Cohen. Diplomats, prime ministers, and Pope Paul VI tried to intervene, but efforts failed. Despite several international efforts, the Syrian government executed Eli Cohen by publicly hanging him at the Marjah Square, Damascus on May 18, 1965. His body was kept on display for several hours for the general public to see. Eli Cohen provided an incredible amount of intelligence data to the Israeli army over a period of 3 years. In 1967, the Israelis were able to conquer the Golan Heights in 2 days, in part due to the intelligence he provided. As intelligence chief Meir Amit said, Eli succeeded far beyond the capabilities of most other men. What is perhaps most amazing about Eli Cohen is that he was genuinely liked, even loved, by so many of the top Syrian leaders. He had an input into and an impact on Syrian national defense, and was privy to almost all of their secrets. He genuinely fit into life in the Syrian capital, and he was never suspected of being a spy until almost the very end. It is for these reasons Eli Cohen is known as Israel's greatest spy.